It's been around 5 months since I recorded this video on which is cheaper, Claude Pro versus API. And I've noticed that in the past weeks, a lot of people are searching for this. I've gotten a lot of questions around which one of these platforms are the most cost efficient. Not necessarily the best, but cost efficient. And right off the bat, just like I did in this video, and well, it's the top one comment, giving a clear answer from the get-go and explaining it later is insta-like. The instant and most direct answer would be that Codex is the AI agent for coding that is most cost effective. Now, the thing about these X's along the chart is trying to orient people into which is the best option they'd go for if cost is the thing. Because if you're really a newbie, I don't think you should be inside of these CLIs. Just because, I mean, most people just get scared of them and feel like it's something a bit hard. And I know that Codex has their own extension inside of VS Code, but it is surely not as good as Cursor as well as Windsurf. As for the casual person, this is I'd say it's like the entrepreneur that is not necessarily into tech, but they have a website, they want to change something around the website, be it design, be it, I don't know, introduce some type of feature. And you're better off going with Cursor if you're looking to not spend so much and still have something that has a nice interface you can explore pretty well. Eventually, if you progress and go on to being a builder and actually build the app and everything, I'd recommend just going over to the CLI options since they have a much better result overall. But honestly, I mean, I did check Claude Code for the builder, but I'd argue that Codex is better for this column just because I don't think the pro plan for Claude Code is that good. Then eventually, if you do become a pro, I'd recommend Claude Code as well as Codex. I'd just say that, don't go for the basic plan of Claude Code. Just use the 5x plan instead. And by the way, before moving forward, most of what I say about these tools are my opinions after using them. I'd say that I've used most of them for at least 4 months straight, but there are still my opinions. If you disagree with me, please let me know down in the comment section so that we can actually learn together. And same for the calculations. I mean, I did spend some hours calculating these things, but there's always this chance of me forgetting some variable, and if so, let us know down in the comment section as well, and we'll figure out if it actually happened. Okay, so first of all, let's start off from understanding which are the prices we're looking at for each. Since this video is towards the most cost-efficient AI agent for coding, I just listed their most cheapest plans. As you can see, the cheapest plan here is the Windsurf Pro. Then we have to understand what we get from each one of these plans. The hard thing about calculating this is that each one of these tools calculates the token expense differently. And we'll go through how each one of them does that. Some are more straightforward, like the Claude Code Pro plan that gives us 44,000 tokens in a window of 5 hours. Now, the way I calculated this was assuming that a user would have 15 hours of active use. So that would be 3 windows of 44,000 tokens. This would be a total of 132,000. And then there's also a weekly cap. The weekly cap is from 40 to 80 hours. I didn't find an exact number for that, but this would be a total of 352K to 704K tokens per week, which would give us a maximum of 3 million tokens per month. But if the weekly cap is never hit, we could be able to use up to 4 million tokens inside of Claude Code. Now, the reason I'm calculating these tokens is because with those tokens, we can try to figure out how much problems can be fixed by using the cheapest cost per problem model available for each one of these different agents. So for example, inside of Claude Code, the best cost per problem model is probably the Claude Sonnet 4.5. And by the way, this leaderboard is for the SWE Rebench benchmark. I've really liked to use this benchmark just because, I mean, it takes into consideration that some of these models like this red one here, the Claude Opus 4.5, if I select a bigger period, that means that I'm considering repositories that were built before the launch of Claude Opus 4.5, which means that it might be contaminated in a sense where maybe the training for these models already knows how to solve these specific problems that the benchmark tries to evaluate, and therefore it's contaminated. I mean, it will solve the problem not because it's smart enough to solve the problem, but because it already has its training on top of that problem. I hope that was clear. And also we get like a cost per problem here, which is pretty cool. So this is how we'll understand how good, not only cheap, but how good are these different AI agent systems. So back to Excalidraw, just to get over the Claude Code part, you would have roughly around 4 million tokens per month. And not saying that it's worse, maybe you would get more results out of a better agent as well as a better LLM. Something that, like, if you use Codex, for example, let's suppose that you're using a much weaker model, you would end up using like 10 million tokens to do something that in Claude Code you could do with just 4 million tokens. So in that sense, it would just be better going with Claude Code, just because if you're using less tokens, that might probably mean that you're achieving your goals much faster. Okay, that said, let's go over the Codex costs. Now, calculating the amount of tokens per month available in Codex is really hard because OpenAI really doesn't let you know how much tokens you have access to. The only thing that they say is that a per 5-hour window you get from 45 to 225 messages, which varies by complexity. So if you're only asking hard questions, or if you're having the agent probably use a lot of tools to build different projects, like to start off a project, you might be in this 45 range, which would get you just 45 messages. Like, how can we convert messages over to tokens, right? And so what I did was just go inside of the community, see how much tokens people have been able to use per week. And this was around 3 to 5 million tokens, which would give us a rough monthly estimate of 13 to 21 million tokens. And honestly, based on a personal experience of both using Claude Code as well as Codex, I'd say that comparing the cheaper plans from both Claude Code and Codex, you just be able to have actually like a lot more tokens for Codex. And the performance is, I mean, slightly a bit worse. This considering that you're not using Opus 4.5, you'd only have access to Claude Sonnet 4.5 in this more basic plan. Okay, now let's move on to Cursor. Cursor is interesting. I mean, I feel like their plan is the worst in the sense where they're using API credits. So as you might know, all of the LLMs have a provider. So GPT would have OpenAI as a provider, and these providers charge you a certain amount of tokens per usage. So Claude, for example, has Anthropic as a provider, and they charge around $3 for input and $15 per 1 million tokens of output. And that's basically what Cursor also charges us. I mean, for the interface, Cursor is, I feel like it's really beginner friendly. You're also paying for the agent, which is arguably one of the best, except for like Claude Code is just absolutely better. But I mean, as I put it up here, the casual builder as well as the newbie can use Cursor just fine, just because like the interface is really, really, really good. Now, I've separated these two different cards because one is using the GPT-5 Codex and the other one is using Claude Sonnet 4.5. Because if you calculate the amount of tokens you can use based on the API price for each one of these different ones, you'll get really different results just because GPT-5 Codex is much cheaper than the Claude Sonnet 4.5. If we're using the GPT model, we'll get around from 4 to 6 million tokens. So if I just take this in consideration instead of looking at how it would work with the Claude model, it would look like it's much cheaper than Claude Code when it's really not. If you're using a better model, a more expensive model actually, you would end up having around 3.3 million tokens per month, which is less than Claude Code. So if you do want to use Claude Sonnet 4.5, either go with Claude Code or with Windsurf, which is our next one up in the line. Now, the interesting thing about Windsurf is that they are based off of credits. And the way these credits work is if you have an agent do, I don't know, a really complex task. So same as the Codex example that is based on complexity, instead of when you ask it something hard, it aiming to be around this like 45 messages range, which would allow you to build less. What happens in Windsurf is that it is treated like a single credit. So because you're just using one credit per prompt, what's happening here is that you could give it a really hard task to do, like create an Next.js app that does this, and that, and has authentication. You place everything inside of that single prompt. It'll be using a lot of different tools. It might use some MCPs, and you'll be charged just 1 credit out of 500. Now, the bad part about that is, okay, you asked it to do a really complex thing, and you really used up that single credit efficiently, right? But sometimes you'll have a really dumb thing for the AI to do, which, I mean, for vibe coders, they really wouldn't know how to get inside of the code and really ask it to do something. Like, they wouldn't understand exactly what to ask for or really do that themselves, like go inside of the code and change that. So they'd ask the LLM to do that. And this would roughly spend, I don't know, let's say like 200 tokens. But these 200 tokens, despite being really like few tokens, would also spend 1 credit. So I don't know, like, but for me, it's the experience where every single prompt I'd send would be, I'd like rethink that prompt and think, should I be wasting my entire credit with this prompt? But still, it's 500 credits per month. I tried to calculate this, considering that 10% of these prompts would be actual hard prompts that would take us up to 30,000 tokens per prompt. Then around 30% of these 500 credits could be wasted with 10K tokens prompt, and then light prompt would take 5,000 tokens. And I mean, this is a lot, okay? This would average around 9,000, which would take us to roughly around 4.5 million tokens. I liked this calculation just because it's around what Cursor gives us as tokens as well. Now, I know that comparing Windsurf with Cursor like that would be kind of off because they also have their own free models. Not free, like you'd pay to have them, but they are unlimited. The problem now is that inside of Cursor, it won't be unlimited anymore, so you'll only have this unlimited LLM inside of Windsurf, which is, yeah, it's actually unlimited. It has SWE Bench Pro scores, which is around like 40%. Yeah, it's not a lot. It's actually kind of bad, but if you ask it to do like simple tasks, it'll do it just fine so that you don't spend those credits. It is much faster, so it processes 950 tokens per second against Composer that, yeah, generates 250 tokens per second. So if you're aiming for building something and you're on a budget, just go with Windsurf. It'll be, I mean, you're pretty much good going with it. Something else I get asked a lot is, okay, if Windsurf is just more cost efficient, you'll have access to the same models and everything, why are people even talking about Cursor still? It's because their agent is just better. We have really not a lot of evaluations for AI coding agents, but there's this one from Next.js that points out that Claude is the best one with a success rate of 42%. By the way, this is just based on Next.js usage, not coding overall. We have Codex all the way down here with 30%, but we have Cursor in second place with 38%. So Cursor's agent is really, really good. If we look at the Arc Prize, no, not the Arc Prize, the App Bench. I'm not sure about this benchmark because I just found it recently, but I mean, if you know of a benchmark that measures AI coding agents more effectively, please let us know down in the comment section as well. So in this leaderboard, Claude Code is all the way up here, which I do agree. V0, it kind of depends what you're building, really. And then you have Cursor down here. You do not see Windsurf's agent anywhere. So I'll just assume that it's because Cursor is really has a really good AI agent under the hood and seems to sync up with the Claude models just perfectly. So at the end of the day, if we're only talking about pricings, we have to compare it with, again, the cheapest, most cost-effective model that each one can use. So first off with GPT-5 Codex, and then we'll take a look at it with the Claude Sonnet 4.5. With GPT-5 Codex, we would be able to solve from 7.5 up to 12.2 problems per month with the Codex Plus, which is a lot more than any other. As for Cursor Pro, we would be able to solve 3.4, Windsurf 2.6, Claude Code Pro 2.0. Now, if we were to use Claude Sonnet 4.5, again, it would be 7.5 for Codex just because it's not able to use the Claude Sonnet 4.5. So it's just, I'm defaulting to the GPT-5 Codex, which gives us the same amount of problems per month. But this changes for Cursor, for example, that now we're down to 1.6 in comparison to Claude Code Pro, which allows us to, again, solve 2 problems per month. So from this chart, I think it's a bit obvious that Codex is the most cost-effective AI agent tool that you can use. And if you're just starting out with vibe coding, agentic coding, or whatever, I'd recommend going from Windsurf to Cursor, then Codex Plus, and then Claude Code, but not the Pro plan. If you get to this point of using Claude Code, if you're really taking building really seriously, I'd say that it's totally worth investing in the Max 5X plan. This video is not being sponsored, by the way. It's just that from my personal experience, having access to the best models like Opus 4.5 really does get you building much faster and not getting stuck trying to fix something that the AI did wrong at some point. And so like the iteration just is much faster. But this video, we're not talking about optimal like performance. We're aiming at cost, and therefore Codex should be your go-to. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'd really incentivize you to comment down below your opinion so that we can learn from each other. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then.